Ray Dalio did not start out as one of the world's most influential investors. In fact, his early career was filled with mistakes, some of them so big they nearly ended everything he had built. But instead of letting those failures define him, Dalio turned them into lessons. He studied what went wrong, searched for the root causes, and began writing down rules for himself. Over time, those rules became his principles, clear, tested guidelines for making decisions in both life and work. Dalio founded Bridgewater Associates from his small apartment in 1975. Decades later, it would grow into one of the most successful investment firms in the world. But the real story here is not just about financial success, it is about how a set of principles shaped every decision, every relationship, and every turning point in his journey. For Dalio, principles are not just abstract ideas. They are practical tools, a compass you can use when you are lost, a filter for making choices under pressure, and a foundation for building trust with the people around you. He believes that by making your principles explicit, you reduce confusion, speed up learning, and create an environment where truth and transparency win over politics and ego. In this book, Dalio shares the most important principles that have guided him, principles forged through trial, error, and reflection. They cover how to face reality head-on, how to learn from failure without fear, how to work with people who challenge you, and how to make decisions that stand the test of time. This is not about following Dalio's rules word for word. It is about seeing how one man turned his biggest mistakes into a system for thinking clearly and living intentionally, and how you can create your own set of principles to guide your path. Welcome to Principles, Life and Work by Ray Dalio, here on Books Arena. Ray Dalio often says, truth more precisely, an accurate understanding of reality is the essential foundation for any good outcome. It sounds simple, but living by it requires a discipline that most people avoid. Facing reality means letting go of comforting illusions, admitting when you are wrong, and making decisions based on facts instead of wishes. Dalio learned this lesson early in his career the hard way. In 1982, he made a bold prediction that the U.S. economy was heading for a depression. He was so confident that he bet his company's future on it. He appeared on television, wrote articles, and convinced clients to prepare for economic collapse. But he was wrong. The economy grew instead. His clients lost money, his credibility collapsed, and he was forced to lay off every employee, including himself. It was humiliating. For a while, Dalio questioned whether he had any future at all in finance. But in that low point, he realized something important: being wrong was not the real problem. The real problem was being overconfident without testing his thinking. He had ignored the possibility that he could be wrong. That mistake would never happen again. From then on, Dalio adopted a principle: embrace reality and deal with it. This meant constantly seeking the truth, even when it was uncomfortable, and building systems to check his own blind spots. Instead of relying solely on his opinion, he began actively seeking out people who disagreed with him. If they saw something he did not, he wanted to know about it, even if it meant confronting flaws in his own reasoning. In practical terms, this principle showed up in the way Bridgewater made decisions. Every investment idea was challenged openly. People at all levels were encouraged, even required, to speak up if they saw a problem. Meetings became idea meritocracies, where the best ideas won, regardless of rank or seniority. For example, Dalio once pitched an investment strategy he was sure would succeed. A junior analyst disagreed and brought data to prove why it would fail. In many companies, that analyst might have stayed quiet to avoid offending the boss. At Bridgewater, speaking up was expected. The team reviewed the evidence, realized the analyst was right, and avoided a costly mistake. Dalio believes this culture works because it removes ego from the equation. The goal is not to be right, the goal is to find the right answer. If you care more about protecting your pride than learning the truth, you will make bad decisions. But if you welcome challenges and see mistakes as opportunities to improve, your accuracy and your results will grow over time. He compares it to being a scientist in a lab. A scientist does not get angry when an experiment fails. Instead, they see the failure as valuable data. It shows them what does not work, which brings them one step closer to discovering what does. In the same way, leaders and teams who treat mistakes as data rather than disasters are the ones who keep improving. This principle is not limited to investing or business. In life, embracing reality might mean acknowledging a relationship is not working instead of pretending it will magically improve. It might mean facing financial problems directly instead of ignoring them until they become overwhelming. It might mean admitting you need to learn a skill before you can advance in your career. Dalio says the faster you can see things as they really are without denial, without wishful thinking, the faster you can take action to improve them. Pain is part of this process. But he sees pain as a signal, like a flashing light on your dashboard, telling you there is something important to learn. His formula is simple: pain plus reflection equals progress. When you experience a setback, stop and ask, what actually happened? What can I learn from it? How will I handle it differently next time? This approach turns mistakes into stepping stones instead of roadblocks. By the time Bridgewater became one of the most successful investment firms in the world, this principle had become second nature to Dalio and his team. They did not fear being wrong. They feared not finding out they were wrong soon enough. So part 1 of Dalio's life and work begins with this challenge to all of us: stop avoiding reality. Stop hiding from hard truths. Instead, look them in the eye, learn from them, and use them to shape your next move. That is how you begin to live by principles, not just ideas in your head, but rules that guide you through both success and failure. If embracing reality is the foundation, the next principle in Ray Dalio's journey is this: be radically open-minded. Dalio discovered that no matter how much experience or intelligence you have, your view of the world will always be limited. Each of us sees life through our own lens, shaped by our background, our beliefs, and our blind spots. The danger comes when we start believing that our view is the only view. In his early years at Bridgewater, Dalio would often make quick judgments about an idea based on his own instincts. Sometimes those instincts were right, but sometimes they were way off. Over time, he realized that the best decisions came when he combined his perspective with the perspectives of others, especially those who disagreed with him. He began to treat every conversation as a chance to learn. If someone saw things differently, instead of defending his position, he would get curious. Tell me what you see that I might be missing. This simple shift changed everything. One striking example happened during a heated debate about a potential investment in the late 1990s. Dalio believed it was a great opportunity. One of his senior partners, however, strongly disagreed. Instead of arguing to win, Dalio invited a third party, another experienced investor, to weigh in. They reviewed the data from all angles, including the points Dalio had overlooked. In the end, the decision not to invest saved the company millions of dollars. This principle of radical open-mindedness eventually became part of Bridgewater's DNA. Employees were encouraged to challenge each other openly, regardless of hierarchy. New hires were trained to value truth over politeness, not as an excuse to be rude, but as a commitment to honesty. Dalio believed that if people could put their egos aside and truly listen to opposing views, they could make far better decisions together than they could alone. Being open-minded is not just about hearing other opinions. It is about actively seeking them, especially from people who are different from you. Dalio calls this thoughtful disagreement the art of engaging with contrasting perspectives in a way that is respectful, curious, and productive. Imagine you are trying to navigate through a thick fog. Alone, you might walk straight into a wall without knowing it. But if you have several people looking from different angles, they can warn you about obstacles you cannot see. That is what diverse perspectives do for decision-making. This mindset also means being willing to update your beliefs when new evidence comes in. Dalio compares it to upgrading your operating system. If your current mental model no longer matches reality, you need to install a better one, even if it means admitting you were wrong. This principle extends far beyond the office. In everyday life, being radically open-minded might mean hearing out a family member whose political views are opposite yours, without immediately shutting them down. It could mean asking a trusted friend to critique your work honestly, even if it stings. It could mean seeking advice from someone younger or less experienced, because they might see something you cannot. Dalio warns that the greatest barrier to open-mindedness is our ego, that inner voice that wants to be right, to look smart, and to protect itself from criticism. But in the long run, ego gets in the way of growth. He learned to replace the question "how can I prove I am right?" with "how can I find out what is true?" One of his favorite tools for practicing this is to write down his reasoning for a decision before discussing it with others. That way, he can see clearly whether the conversation changes his thinking. If it does, it means he learned something new, which is a win, even if it hurts his pride. The power of this principle is that it transforms disagreements from battles into opportunities. Instead of fearing different opinions, you start to welcome them. Instead of avoiding people who challenge you, you seek them out. Radical open-mindedness is not about being indecisive or swaying with every opinion. It is about staying committed to finding the best possible answer, no matter where it comes from. Dalio says that the combination of embracing reality and being radically open-minded is unstoppable. One keeps you grounded in the truth, the other expands your vision of what that truth might be. Together, they create a decision-making environment where learning never stops, and improvement is constant. So if part 1 was about seeing the world as it really is, part 2 is about widening your lens, learning to see more of it than you could on your own. Once Ray Dalio learned to embrace reality and to be radically open-minded, he faced a new challenge, turning those ideas into consistent actions. It is one thing to have good intentions. It is another to have a reliable process for making decisions. This is where his next principle comes in: use a clear, repeatable decision-making system. Dalio often says that if you make decisions the same way each time, based on sound principles, your results will be far more consistent than if you rely on gut instinct alone. The human brain, after all, is full of biases. We remember dramatic events more vividly than common ones. We overestimate our own abilities. We focus on short-term emotions rather than long-term consequences. Without a system, those biases can push us into bad decisions before we even realize it. For Dalio, the solution was to treat decision-making like designing a machine. A machine works because each part has a clear purpose and fits together with the others in a logical way. The same should be true for how you decide things. He began by writing down the steps he used to make important choices. At first, it was just for himself, a kind of personal checklist. Over time, he refined these into a set of principles that anyone at Bridgewater could follow. If the principles worked, it did not matter who applied them, the outcome would be similar. One story from the early 2000s shows how powerful this was. The firm was considering a large currency trade that could bring in huge profits or equally huge losses. In the past, this might have been a decision made behind closed doors by a few senior people. But now, the process was open and systematic. The team laid out the data, identified the assumptions behind their reasoning, and compared the situation to similar ones in the past. They also assigned believability weights to each person's opinion, based on their track record in similar decisions. This meant that an opinion from someone with proven success in currency trades carried more weight than an opinion from someone who had never worked in that area. By following the process, the team avoided being swayed by the excitement of the moment. They made their choice based on principles, not emotions. The trade ended up being a success, but more importantly, the process ensured that the outcome was not just luck. Dalio says a good decision-making system should do 3 things. First, it should make your reasoning explicit, so you and others can examine it. Second, it should be repeatable, so you can apply it in different situations. Third, it should be constantly improved, based on what you learn from each decision. This approach works outside of business too. Imagine you are deciding whether to buy a house. Without a system, you might focus too much on how the house makes you feel when you walk in the door, and not enough on its long-term value. But if you have a clear checklist: location, price relative to market, condition of the building, potential for growth, you make a choice based on facts, not just emotions. Dalio also encourages tracking your decisions. At Bridgewater, they would record their reasoning and the results, so they could learn from both successes and failures. This is like keeping a decision diary in your personal life. Over time, patterns emerge. You see where your judgment tends to be strong and where it needs improvement. He warns that without such a system, you are doomed to repeat the same mistakes. But with one, every decision, even the bad ones, becomes a chance to refine your principles and get better. Dalio compares it to flying a plane. Pilots use checklists for every flight, not because they do not know what they are doing, but because the checklist removes unnecessary risk. No matter how skilled you are, a clear, repeatable process keeps you from missing something important. This principle also builds trust in a team. When people know that decisions are made based on transparent principles, not on hidden agendas or personal preferences, they feel more confident in the outcome even if they disagreed with it. By creating a decision-making system, Dalio ensured that Bridgewater could function without him making every call. The principles became part of the company's DNA, guiding choices long after the moment had passed. In short, Part 3 is about building your own machine for decision-making, one that runs on clear principles, is tested over time, and is improved with every use. Because in life and work, luck will always play a role, but a solid system tilts the odds in your favor. With a decision-making system in place, Ray Dalio faced another crucial truth: success is not built by one person alone. It is built by a group of people working together, and the strength of that group depends on its culture. The next principle is build a culture of radical truth and radical transparency. For most companies, certain things are left unsaid. People hide mistakes, avoid uncomfortable topics, and tell their bosses what they want to hear. Dalio believed this was poison for good decision-making. If the goal is to discover what is true, then hiding the truth even unintentionally is the fastest way to fail. He set out to create a workplace where anyone could speak honestly, where mistakes were not hidden but examined, and where the flow of information was open to everyone. This sounded good in theory, but in practice, it took courage. Radical truth meant saying what you really think, even if it was about your boss. Radical transparency meant opening up company information including meeting recordings to all employees. One memorable example of this came after a meeting where Dalio himself made a mistake in judgment. In most companies, no one would dare call out the founder in public. But at Bridgewater, an employee sent Dalio an email afterward rating his performance in the meeting as poor. Instead of punishing the employee, Dalio thanked him and shared the feedback with the entire company. That single moment sent a powerful message: no one, not even the CEO, is above criticism. Dalio believed that in an environment like this, problems surface quickly, and solutions can be found faster. If someone makes a mistake, they are expected to admit it openly, analyze it, and share what they learned so others can avoid the same trap. It is not about shaming, it is about improving. To make this work, Bridgewater developed tools like the Dot Collector, a system where employees rate each other in real time during meetings. Over time, the data builds up, revealing patterns in how people think and perform. If someone consistently scores high in creative thinking but low in follow-through, the team knows to pair them with someone strong in execution. This is not guesswork, it is data-driven teamwork. Of course, radical truth and transparency are not always comfortable. People are used to protecting their egos and avoiding tough conversations. In the early days, some new hires could not handle it and left. But those who stayed found that this openness built deep trust. You did not have to wonder what your colleagues really thought of your work, you already knew. Dalio compares it to a sports team. On a great team, players do not hide their weaknesses. They want their teammates to point them out, so they can improve before the next game. That same principle applies in business and in life. Outside the workplace, radical truth might look like being honest with your partner about your concerns in a relationship, instead of letting resentment grow. Radical transparency could be sharing your financial situation openly with your family, so you can plan together. It is about replacing hidden agendas with clear communication. Dalio admits that this culture is not for everyone. Some people prefer harmony over truth, or privacy over openness. But for those who can adapt, the benefits are enormous. Decisions are made faster because the facts are clear. Trust grows because people know where they stand. And the team becomes stronger because weaknesses are addressed, not ignored. One of Dalio's favorite phrases is, pain plus reflection equals progress. Radical truth and transparency can be painful at first, but if you reflect on the discomfort and learn from it, you move forward stronger. By building this kind of culture, Dalio ensured that Bridgewater was not just a place where smart people worked, but a place where the smartest ideas could win no matter who they came from. So part 4 is about more than honesty. It is about creating an environment where truth is valued above ego, where transparency builds trust, and where the courage to speak up becomes the foundation for lasting success. After establishing a culture of radical truth and transparency, Ray Dalio learned something important: even in a place where the truth is valued, people still have different strengths, weaknesses, and ways of thinking. The next principle is get the right people in the right roles. Dalio often says that a great idea in the wrong hands will fail, but an average idea in the right hands can become a success. This is because people are not interchangeable. Each person has a unique mix of skills, experiences, and thinking styles. The key is to match those traits with the work they are naturally suited for. At Bridgewater, Dalio used a simple analogy: imagine you are building a professional sports team. You would not put your best striker in the goalkeeper position. It does not matter how talented they are, if the role does not match their abilities, the team suffers. In business, the same logic applies. A brilliant strategist might be terrible at day-to-day execution, while someone with great organizational skills might struggle with creative problem solving. Dalio experienced this lesson early in his career. He once hired a trader who looked perfect on paper: great education, strong recommendations, and impressive experience. But months into the job, it became clear that the trader could not handle the pressure of fast, high-stakes decisions. Instead of letting him fail quietly, Dalio reassigned him to a role that involved market research and analysis. In that role, the trader excelled, producing insights that helped the team make profitable moves. The wrong role nearly destroyed his confidence, the right role brought out his best. To make better matches, Dalio and his team used personality assessments, performance data, and direct observation. They wanted to understand not just what someone knew, but how they thought, how they reacted under stress, and what motivated them. The goal was to put each person where they could contribute the most and enjoy the work they were doing. This principle is not just for business leaders. In everyday life, it can change how you approach teamwork and relationships. Imagine you are planning a community event with friends. If you know one friend is great with numbers, you put them in charge of budgeting. If another is highly creative but disorganized, you have them design the flyers and decorations, while someone else handles scheduling. Matching roles to strengths makes the whole process smoother. Dalio also warns against a common mistake: hiring people who are just like you. It feels comfortable, but it limits your range of thinking. He prefers teams made up of different perspectives, people who see the world in ways you do not. That diversity, combined with radical truth and transparency, leads to stronger decisions. At Bridgewater, they even went so far as to create baseball cards for employees. These cards showed each person's strengths, weaknesses, and past performance, so everyone knew what to expect from each other. If you needed fast analysis under pressure, you knew exactly who to call. If you needed someone to think through a complex, long-term problem, you called someone else. It was not about status or titles, it was about matching the role to the player. The impact of this principle went beyond efficiency. When people are in roles that fit them, they feel more confident, more engaged, and more willing to take ownership of their work. On the other hand, when people are in roles that do not fit, they become frustrated, make mistakes, and eventually burn out. Dalio's advice is simple but powerful: do not try to fix people to fit a role, find the role that fits the person. This mindset turns hiring, promotions, and team assignments into a deliberate process instead of a guessing game. And when you have the right people in the right roles, combined with a culture of truth, transparency, and strong decision-making, you create a team that can adapt to almost any challenge. The pieces fit together, and the machine runs smoothly. So part 5 is about alignment: putting people where they can succeed, building teams that balance each other's strengths, and remembering that the right person in the right role is worth far more than simply filling a position. With the right people in the right roles, Ray Dalio turned his focus to making sure the organization itself functioned like a well-designed machine. This next principle is: treat your work and your life like a system that can be improved. Dalio often compares an organization to a machine, with people as the parts and processes as the design. If the machine produces bad results, you do not just complain or hope for better luck, you study the machine, figure out which parts are not working, and fix them. The same approach can be applied to life. Early in Bridgewater's history, there was a time when the company lost a large client because a report was delivered late and incomplete. Most leaders would simply blame the employee responsible. But Dalio asked a different question: why did the system allow this mistake to happen? After looking deeper, he found that the real problem was a lack of clear checkpoints in the process. The employee was talented but did not have a structure for reviewing and verifying the report before it went out. The solution was to redesign the workflow, not just scold the person. Dalio's process for improvement is simple. First, identify the problem. Do not sugarcoat it. If the machine is not producing the results you want, be honest about it. Second, diagnose the root cause. Is it a person's skill gap? A missing process? Misaligned priorities? Third, design a solution. This could mean adding a new step, removing unnecessary steps, or even reassigning responsibilities. Fourth, implement the fix and monitor the results. He believed that this method works because it turns setbacks into data. Instead of seeing mistakes as personal failures, you see them as clues for how to improve the machine. This principle applies just as well to personal life. Imagine you are always late for work. Most people blame traffic, their alarm clock, or just bad luck. Dalio would tell you to treat it like a machine problem. Look at the system: What time do you go to bed? How long does your morning routine take? Are there steps you could simplify? Once you see the problem clearly, you can redesign your routine to get the result you want. One of Dalio's favorite sayings is, think of yourself as a machine operating within a machine. That means you have to improve both yourself and the environment you operate in. If you get better at your role but the system around you is broken, progress will still be slow. And if the system is strong but you do not keep improving, you will become the weak link. At Bridgewater, they constantly tested and refined their processes. If a meeting went badly, they did not just move on, they analyzed what went wrong and how to prevent it next time. If a trade failed, they broke down the decision-making process step by step to see where the error happened. Over time, this constant tweaking made the organization more resilient. The beauty of this approach is that it removes a lot of emotion from problems. Instead of saying, you messed up, it becomes, the machine produced a bad result, let us fix the machine. This mindset keeps people focused on solutions rather than blame. Dalio also emphasizes that improvement never ends. A machine that works well today might break tomorrow if the world changes. That is why you must always be ready to adapt, to test, and to redesign. In life, this means paying attention to patterns. If you keep running into the same issue, whether it is with money, relationships, or career, it is a sign the machine needs work. Do not ignore it. Study it, adjust it, and keep improving until it runs smoothly. So part 6 is about becoming the engineer of your own life and work. It is about stepping back from the heat of the moment, looking at the bigger picture, and asking, what can I change in the system to get better results? When you see problems this way, every setback becomes a chance to build something stronger. After decades of building Bridgewater and refining his principles, Ray Dalio came to one final, powerful lesson: embrace reality, and adapt to it. Life will not bend to your will just because you want it to. The market will crash when you are not ready. People you rely on will leave. Plans that seemed perfect will fall apart in a single day. You cannot control reality, but you can control how you respond to it. Dalio learned this the hard way. In the early 1980s, he was convinced that the US economy was heading for a deep depression. He made bold public predictions and adjusted his investments accordingly. But he was wrong. The economy surged instead, and his bad bets wiped him out. He lost so much money that he had to borrow from his father just to pay the bills. That failure could have ended his career. Instead, it taught him humility. It forced him to face the truth: he did not know as much as he thought he did. From that point on, Dalio made a conscious choice: he would never ignore reality in favor of his own opinions. He would seek out other perspectives, test his assumptions, and be willing to change his mind quickly when new information came in. This is what it means to embrace reality. It is not about giving up your dreams or lowering your standards. It is about starting with the truth, the world as it is, and then figuring out how to move forward from there. Dalio compares it to being a sailor at sea. You cannot control the wind or the waves, but you can adjust your sails. If the weather changes, you do not yell at the storm, you adapt your course. In life and work, it is the same. The faster you see things as they are, the faster you can make changes that keep you moving toward your goals. At Bridgewater, this meant building systems that constantly absorbed new data and updated decisions. It also meant encouraging employees to speak up if they saw a better way forward, even if it meant contradicting Dalio himself. The culture was built on the belief that it is better to discover you are wrong quickly than to be proven wrong too late. In everyday life, this principle can mean accepting that a job you once loved is no longer fulfilling, and making the hard choice to find a new one. It can mean recognizing that a relationship is unhealthy, no matter how much time you have invested in it, and having the courage to let go. It can mean admitting that your current plan will not work, and creating a new one without wasting more time. Dalio also emphasizes the importance of resilience. Embracing reality is not just about seeing the truth, it is about recovering from setbacks without losing momentum. Every failure, every rejection, every obstacle becomes part of the data you use to improve your machine. You stop seeing challenges as personal attacks and start seeing them as the natural waves of life. By the end of his career, Dalio realized that his greatest successes did not come from avoiding mistakes. They came from facing mistakes head-on, learning from them, and adapting faster than others. The world will keep changing. The people who thrive are not the ones who guess right every time, but the ones who learn, adjust, and keep going. So part 7 is about living with your eyes wide open, seeing the world clearly, accepting what you cannot change, and acting decisively on what you can. It is the final piece that ties all the other principles together. With radical truth, the right people in the right roles, a machine that keeps improving, and the courage to face reality, you give yourself the best chance to live and work well, no matter what storms come your way. As we come to the end of Principles, Life and Work by Ray Dalio, let us take a moment to reflect on the journey we have just traveled. We began with Dalio's belief that life, like work, is full of patterns, and if we take the time to study them, we can make better decisions. We learned about the power of radical truth and transparency, and how surrounding ourselves with the right people can multiply our strengths. We explored how to design life and work like a machine, constantly diagnosing problems and improving systems. And finally, we discovered the importance of embracing reality, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, and adapting to it with resilience. Dalio's story is not a tale of someone who never made mistakes. In fact, it is the opposite. His life is proof that setbacks are not the end, they are the data points that guide us to something better. Every failure taught him a lesson. Every lesson became a principle. And every principle became a tool he could use to make smarter choices. These ideas are not just for billion-dollar hedge funds. They are for you, for me, for anyone who wants to live deliberately and work effectively. Whether you are starting a business, building a career, or navigating the challenges of everyday life, these principles can help you see more clearly, decide more wisely, and act more effectively. Remember, the goal is not perfection. The goal is progress, to be a little wiser, a little stronger, and a little more capable each time you face a challenge. This is the heart of Dalio's philosophy. Life is a never-ending process of learning, improving, and moving forward. And when we approach it with curiosity, humility, and courage, we give ourselves the best chance to create the life we want. Thank you for joining me on this journey through Principles, Life and Work here on Books Arena. I hope these ideas inspire you to look at your own life and ask, what are the principles that guide me? And how can I refine them to move closer to the truth and to my goals? Until next time, keep learning, keep adapting, and keep building the life you want. Welcome to Books Arena, the place where powerful ideas become unforgettable journeys. Today, we dive into a book that challenges everything we think we know about success. When we look at people who rise above the rest, Olympic athletes, tech billionaires, music legends, academic prodigies, we often ask, what's their secret? Is it raw talent? Is it hard work? Is it just luck? Outliers offers a different perspective, one that turns the spotlight away from the individual and toward the world around them. It asks not just what successful people are like, but where they come from, what opportunities shaped them, and how their upbringing, culture, and timing made all the difference. This is not a book filled with cliches about working harder. It is about patterns hidden in plain sight. Why are so many elite hockey players born in the first few months of the year? How did Bill Gates gain access to a computer terminal in 1968 when almost no one had even seen one? What role did culture play in airline crashes or mathematical problem solving? The answers are rarely simple, and they are never just personal. Malcolm Gladwell walks us through stories, research, and real-life examples that reveal a deeper truth: success is never solely about individual grit or genius. It is about the opportunity to apply that genius in the right context, with the right support, and at the right time. And so, this audiobook journey is not just about the people who made it to the top, it is about the systems, the histories, and the invisible forces that helped them get there. As you listen, you may begin to see your own life differently. You may discover how your background, your timing, and even your family's culture have already shaped your path and how they will continue to. We often celebrate the finish line, but this story begins long before the race is ever run. In Outliers, success is not just earned, it is enabled. So sit back, relax, and let us explore the real story behind what makes people rise, the untold stories of timing, culture, opportunity, and persistence. This is not a tale of heroes, it is a study of the world that surrounds them. Let us begin. Part 1, The Hidden Pattern of Success. Success often looks like magic from the outside. We see the final result, the polished performance, the prestigious award, the headlines. But rarely do we pause to ask, what came before? What forces, beyond hard work and intelligence, paved the road? Imagine standing in an ice rink in Canada, watching a group of young boys glide across the surface during a youth hockey league tryout. To the untrained eye, they all look alike in skill and size. But a closer look at the roster tells a curious story. Most of these boys were born in January, February, or March. A coincidence? Not quite. This is the beginning of what Malcolm Gladwell calls the hidden pattern of success. In Canadian youth hockey, the cut-off date for age group leagues is January 1st. That means a boy born on January 2nd is in the same group as a boy born on December 31st, almost a full year apart. In early childhood, that age gap is enormous. The older boys are slightly bigger, slightly stronger, slightly faster, and they get noticed. They are picked for better teams, get better coaching, more practice, and more opportunities. Over time, that small early advantage snowballs into major success. This is known as the Matthew effect, named after a passage in the Gospel of Matthew, "For unto everyone that hath shall be given." In other words, those who already have advantages will gain more, while those without fall further behind. But it is not just hockey. Look at elite students, chess champions, or math contest winners, and you will find similar patterns. Small early differences, often completely outside one's control, can compound into something extraordinary. And because we are so used to praising the end result, we forget to examine the beginning. This first insight from outliers challenges the myth of the self-made success. Yes, talent matters. Effort matters even more. But opportunity, often invisible, often random, plays a role we cannot ignore. Take the story of Bill Gates. He is often celebrated as a genius who built Microsoft out of sheer brilliance and drive. But how many people know that Gates attended a private school that was one of the only high schools in America with a computer terminal in the late 1960s? Or that he had access to unlimited programming time when most universities limited it? Or that he had thousands of hours of practice before he even got to college? Gates was talented and hardworking, no one denies that. But he also had extraordinary access to an environment that nurtured that talent long before the rest of the world even understood what computing would become. Now think of the Beatles. Before they were famous, they played in Hamburg, Germany, performing live for 8 hours a night, 7 days a week, for months on end. It was grueling. But that experience gave them the chance to experiment, refine their style, and become the tight, innovative band the world would eventually recognize. What Gladwell points out is this: these stories are not about shortcuts or privilege alone. They are about the accumulation of advantage. Success does not happen in a vacuum. It builds moment by moment, layer by layer, from opportunities that many never even see. Even your birth year can influence your success. In one chapter, Gladwell explores how being born in the early 1950s created a perfect storm of opportunity for computer pioneers like Gates, Steve Jobs, and others. They were just the right age, old enough to be ready when computers first became accessible, but young enough to seize the moment with fresh ambition. This does not mean people born in the wrong month or the wrong year are doomed to fail. What it means is this: we must stop asking only what successful people are like, and start asking where they come from, what their world looked like, who opened doors for them, and what systems supported their rise. If we want a fairer, more honest view of success, we need to zoom out. We need to recognize that behind every high achiever is a story, a context, a history, and often, a series of fortunate events. By doing that, we can stop worshiping outcomes and start building environments where more people can thrive. It is not about lowering the bar. It is about widening the gate. Because the real story of success is not about being special. It is about being in the right place, at the right time, and being ready when opportunity knocks. Part 2, The Matthew Effect. In the world of achievement, success is often portrayed as a fair competition. The idea is simple: if you are smart enough, driven enough, and work hard enough, you will rise. But what if the race starts before the starting gun? What if the field is tilted before the first step is taken? This is where we begin to understand the Matthew effect, a powerful idea that small differences in early advantage grow over time into massive disparities. It is not about cheating or favoritism. It is about how systems reward those who already have a head start, often without anyone even realizing it. Picture this: 2 children enter kindergarten. One had books read to them every night since they were 2 years old. The other grew up in a home where parents worked multiple jobs and had little time or energy for bedtime stories. By the time both children sit in front of the same alphabet chart in school, they are not starting from the same place, and that early gap, however slight, begins to widen. Teachers spot the child who reads well and label them gifted. That child gets more encouragement, more advanced materials, more confidence. The other child, though just as capable, struggles to catch up and soon believes they are simply not good at reading. The same pattern appears in sports. In Canadian hockey, as we saw earlier, children born in the first few months of the year are physically more mature than those born later. Coaches notice the slightly stronger, faster players who just happen to be older. These players get more ice time, better training, and play in more competitive leagues. By their teens, the gap is massive, though it began with just a few months of age difference. Malcolm Gladwell shows how this kind of compounding advantage shapes not just hockey stars but also academic superstars, business leaders, and artists. Success, he argues, is not simply a reward for talent, it is often the result of cumulative advantage that begins early and builds steadily. One powerful real-world example is the system of tracking in schools where students are placed into different academic paths based on early assessments. A child who scores well at a young age is placed into an advanced class. That class has better teachers, more resources, and higher expectations. Over the years, those advantages multiply. But what if the initial assessment was skewed by something as trivial as the child being a few months older or having more exposure to books at home? The Matthew effect is not just a theory. It is visible in standardized test scores, college admissions, job opportunities, and even social connections. Those who get early breaks often build momentum. Those who do not are told they simply did not measure up. Now, imagine if we adjusted our systems to account for this. What if youth sports leagues grouped players by birth quarters rather than years? What if schools delayed assessments until children had more equal footing in terms of development? These are not radical changes. They are small shifts that recognize how easily we mistake early advantage for inherent ability. This concept also challenges the myth of the lone genius. When we think of great minds like Mozart, we forget that he was the son of a musician and started composing under his father's guidance at a very young age. His talent was extraordinary, yes, but it was nurtured by access, support, and time. The same goes for professional success. Consider law firms in New York during the 1950s. Many of the most prestigious firms at that time discriminated against Jewish lawyers. So those lawyers formed their own firms and took the kinds of cases that old guard firms refused: proxy fights, takeovers, corporate restructurings. By the 1980s, those types of cases were the future of law, and the outsiders had become the insiders. Again, it was not just brilliance, it was circumstance meeting preparation. It was being in the right field, at the right moment, with the right kind of experience. And it all began with being excluded, a disadvantage that transformed, over time, into an unexpected edge. What the Matthew effect teaches us is that success does not simply reward the best, it rewards those who got the best start. And unless we become aware of that, we will keep designing systems that reinforce inequality, even while believing they are fair. We must look beyond the scoreboard and ask deeper questions: who had the chance to practice more? Who had access to better coaching? Who had someone believing in them early on? Success is not a straight line. It is a staircase built over time, and every step matters. Part 3, the 10,000-hour rule. When you see someone excel, whether on a concert stage, a boardroom floor, or a scientific breakthrough, it is tempting to believe that brilliance is just a spark of innate genius. But one of the most transformative ideas from Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers tells us something very different. Success at the highest levels requires not just talent, but a staggering amount of time, about 10,000 hours of focused practice. Take the story of Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. Often hailed as a child prodigy, Mozart began composing at the age of 5. But his truly remarkable compositions, the ones that made him a legend, came after he had been composing for more than a decade. By the time he produced the work we remember him for, he had already put in thousands of hours of effort. Or consider the Beatles. Before the world knew their name, they were just a young band from Liverpool trying to find their sound. That sound was forged not in a shiny London studio, but in the smoky clubs of Hamburg, Germany. There, they played relentlessly, sometimes 8 hours a day, 7 days a week. By the time Beatlemania hit, they had performed live over 1,200 times, far more than most bands perform in a lifetime. Gladwell's deep dive into the success stories of legends like these reveals a consistent truth: 10,000 hours of deep, deliberate practice is the magic threshold. Not 10 hours, not 1,000, 10,000. That is roughly 3 hours of practice a day for 10 years. Bill Gates. Before Microsoft, he had access to a computer terminal at the age of 13, a rarity in the 1960s. He spent night after night learning to program, not because someone told him to, but because he was obsessed. By the time he dropped out of Harvard, he had already logged thousands of hours writing code. And Gates is not alone. Steve Jobs, Bobby Fischer, Serena Williams, and even fictional characters like Sherlock Holmes, their genius is less about raw talent and more about deep immersion. They lived inside their craft. The 10,000-hour rule is not a rigid formula, it is a symbol. It reminds us that mastery comes from time, consistency, and intensity. You cannot fast forward greatness. There is no app, no shortcut, no hack. What exists instead is the slow accumulation of skill through constant repetition, painful feedback, and tireless refinement. But there is something deeper here. Gladwell is not just saying practice makes perfect. He is showing that even practice itself is shaped by access. Think about it: who has 10,000 hours to spare? A child whose parents can afford private coaching, who has a safe environment to explore their passions, who is encouraged rather than doubted. That child is more likely to accumulate the hours. A young musician in a family that cannot afford instruments or lessons may be just as talented, but the path is far steeper. So, the rule is not just about effort. It is about opportunity to put in the effort. Talent matters, but without the time and space to sharpen it, talent alone will not carry you far. We also learn that not all hours are equal. 10,000 hours of mindless repetition will not produce a master. What matters is deliberate practice, focused, challenging, and guided. It means working on weaknesses, not just playing to strengths. It means pushing the boundaries of discomfort, over and over again. Gladwell gives the example of violinists at the elite Berlin Academy of Music. Researchers divided them into three groups: world-class soloists, good performers, and those likely to become music teachers. All had started playing around the same age. But by the time they were 20, the top performers had practiced an average of 10,000 hours. The good performers had logged about 8,000. The future teachers, about 4,000. No one in the top group had simply coasted on talent. And no one in the bottom group had practiced as much as the best. That is the point: effort is not the whole story, but it is the story we often ignore. This idea shifts the spotlight. Instead of asking, why is that person so talented, we begin asking, how much time did they spend getting this good? That question is both humbling and empowering. It reminds us that excellence is not reserved for the chosen few, it is available to anyone who is willing to put in the time. But remember, the opportunity to put in that time is often a gift. A gift of circumstance, of support, of environment. Success, then, is not about genius alone. It is about preparation meeting possibility 10,000 hours at a time. Part 4, The Trouble with Talent. We love to believe in talent. It is comforting, even magical, the idea that some people are simply born with extraordinary gifts. They do not have to try as hard. Things come naturally to them. And if we are not among them, well, then it is not our fault. We were just not born with it. But what if that belief in raw, natural talent is not only misleading but also limiting? In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell examines a deeper truth: that talent, while real, is often overrated, and worse, it can blind us to the more important ingredients of success: effort, context, and opportunity. Consider the case of Christopher Langan, often called the smartest man in America. His IQ is estimated to be around 195, higher than Einstein's. From a young age, Langan could read before most children could speak. He understood physics without being taught. He was, by every academic measure, a genius. Yet Langan never made it big. He dropped out of college. He spent much of his life doing manual labor, working on farms, handling machinery, living far from the world of intellectual prestige his intelligence seemed to promise. Why? It was not a lack of brain power. It was a lack of what Gladwell calls practical intelligence, the ability to navigate systems, talk to authority figures, and use one's environment to advantage. Langan came from a tough, unstable background. He did not know how to ask for help, challenge unfairness, or advocate for himself in an academic setting. And so, doors closed that he never learned how to open. Now contrast Langan with someone like Robert Oppenheimer, the father of the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer was brilliant, yes, but he also had something else: social savvy. When he got into trouble at Cambridge for a serious offense, he managed to talk his way out. He was raised in a wealthy, cultured family. He was trained not just in knowledge but in confidence, charm, and persuasion. Gladwell is not suggesting that intelligence does not matter, of course it does. But it is not the only thing that matters. And often, it is not even the most important thing. What truly separates those who rise from those who stall is not always raw ability, it is the ability to apply that ability within the right context. Let us go back to school for a moment. Picture two students. One is naturally gifted, a quick learner who barely studies. The other is average but hardworking, spending hours poring over each subject. At first, the gifted student seems ahead. But over time, it is the hardworking student who often wins. Why? Because grit beats gift when the race is long. This is also why we sometimes see kids with perfect SAT scores struggle in real life, while others with average scores go on to build empires. The test may measure raw logic, but it does not measure creativity, resilience, or emotional intelligence. This brings us to a profound insight: privilege can look like talent. If a child grows up in a home filled with books, with parents who take them to museums and engage in thoughtful conversation, they are likely to do well in school. But is that talent or environment? When another child, just as bright, grows up in a chaotic household without that kind of support, their brilliance might never get a chance to shine. And so, we say the first is gifted and the second underperforming. But are they? Gladwell forces us to confront a hard truth: our systems reward polish, not just potential. The way success is measured in grades, test scores, interviews often favors those who have been trained to play the game. Think of a job interview. Two candidates walk in. One is naturally shy, but brilliant. The other is charismatic and articulate but average in skill. Who gets the job? In many cases, the one who sounds more prepared, not the one who is more capable. This is the trouble with talent. We assume it is the whole story. But often, it is a shortcut for explaining success without digging deeper. The truth is, talent is only as valuable as the systems that support it. A gifted artist who never gets to paint, a genius coder who never owns a computer, a brilliant mind silenced by poverty or fear, these are not failures of talent. They are failures of access. Gladwell challenges us to stop asking only, how talented is this person, and to start asking, what chances did they have to use their talent? What help did they get? What barriers were removed? Because behind every outlier, every extraordinary success is a network of advantages: encouragement, timing, mentorship, resources, and yes, the determination to keep going. In the end, talent is only a beginning. It is the soil. But growth requires water, light, care, and time. Without those, even the richest seed will never bloom. Part 5, The Power of Culture. Imagine this: two pilots from different countries are flying planes in identical weather conditions. One lands safely. The other crashes. Both were trained professionals, both had experience, both knew the risks. So, what made the difference? In many cases, according to Malcolm Gladwell, it is not skill or intelligence, it is culture. Culture shapes how we communicate, how we follow authority, how we respond under pressure, and even how we handle emergencies. And when it comes to high-stakes professions like aviation, the consequences of cultural differences can be life or death. Take the example of Korean Air in the 1990s. The airline had one of the worst safety records in the world. Planes were crashing not because of engine failure or poor equipment but because of how the crew interacted in the cockpit. Junior officers were too respectful to challenge captains' decisions, even when something was clearly wrong. They were afraid to speak up, afraid to break protocol, afraid to question someone in authority. This deep-rooted deference, born out of Korean cultural norms, was costing lives. It was not until the airline radically changed its communication training, encouraging more open dialogue, flattening authority, and shifting cultural expectations, that their safety record improved. Today, Korean Air is one of the safest airlines in the world. Not because they hired better pilots, but because they changed the culture inside the cockpit. Gladwell calls this idea of power distance: how much a culture values hierarchy and authority. In cultures with high power distance, subordinates are expected to stay silent, even when they disagree. In low power distance cultures, people are more likely to challenge authority, ask questions, and speak up, which can be critical in crisis situations. And it is not just about planes. This principle applies across industries, from hospitals to boardrooms to classrooms. Culture is not just background noise, it is a force that influences decisions, behavior, and outcomes. Let us consider another example, one that seems far from aviation, Math performance in different countries. Why do students in some Asian countries consistently outperform others in international math exams? Is it genetics? Better teachers? Smarter kids? Gladwell digs deeper and finds an unexpected answer: rice farming. Yes, rice farming. Unlike wheat farming in the West, which is seasonal and mechanized, rice farming is a labor-intensive, year-round effort that requires constant attention, planning, and precision. For generations, Asian cultures built their identities around this kind of work, the belief that success is earned through persistence, discipline, and patience. That same mindset, meticulous attention, daily effort, and a belief in hard work carries into their educational systems. So, a student from a culture shaped by centuries of rice farming may approach a difficult math problem not with anxiety or resignation, but with the mindset of, if I work hard enough, I can figure this out. It is not about being born smart. It is about believing that effort leads to results, and that belief is deeply cultural. Now imagine how this plays out in everyday life. One student gives up after 5 minutes on a difficult problem, convinced they are just not a math person. Another keeps at it for an hour, because they have been raised to believe that persistence matters more than natural ability. Over time, who ends up ahead? This is why culture matters. It teaches us what to value, whether it is obedience or independence, struggle or ease, conformity or questioning. And those values quietly shape our lives, our careers, and even our safety. In Outliers, we learn that success is not just about what we do individually, it is about the norms and beliefs we inherit from the people around us. And sometimes, to become truly great, we have to examine those norms, challenge them, and choose something better. Think about this: what invisible rules guide your daily behavior? Who taught you how to talk to a boss, to solve a problem, to treat failure? Those lessons may seem personal, but they are often cultural scripts passed down without question. And the beauty of culture is that it can evolve. Korean Air changed its cockpit culture. Schools can shift how they talk about talent and effort. Families can teach their children to question with respect, not just obey without thought. If we want to unlock the full potential of individuals, we have to shape the culture around them, one that allows them not only to work, but to thrive. Because in the end, the story of success is not just about one person standing at the top, it is about the web of beliefs, traditions, and values that help them climb. Part 6, The Legacy of Hard Work. There is an old saying that goes, "You reap what you sow." For generations, people have known that consistent, patient effort often brings reward. But what if this belief is not just a motivational phrase, but a deeply ingrained cultural legacy, one that determines how far you go in life? In Outliers, Malcolm Gladwell explores how the legacy of hard work, passed down through generations, influences the way people approach problems, school, and even success itself. Let us take a closer look at students in different parts of the world. On international math tests, students from countries like China and Japan regularly score near the top. Now, many assume this is because those students are simply smarter or their schools are more advanced. But the real reason is far more interesting. It is about mindset. Gladwell introduces a fascinating idea, that the difference is not ability, but attitude, and attitude shaped by history. For hundreds of years, cultures rooted in rice farming required relentless effort. Every part of the rice crop, planting, watering, harvesting, demanded patience, planning, and daily labor. It was not enough to work hard once. You had to work consistently, season after season, year after year. This agricultural legacy shaped how generations of people viewed work. They came to believe that success comes from diligence, not luck. From perseverance, not instant brilliance. This belief did not disappear with modernization. It carried into classrooms. Students raised in these cultures learn from a young age that struggle is not a sign of failure, it is a sign of progress. So when they sit with a difficult math problem, they do not give up. They dig in. Because the lesson their ancestors passed down is simple: effort pays off. Gladwell shares a powerful example. Researchers once gave students a math puzzle, something complex and challenging. But they were not measuring who got the answer right. They were watching how long each student worked before giving up. What they discovered was remarkable. The students who persisted the longest, sometimes up to an hour, were often from cultures with a long tradition of hard work. Their willingness to endure difficulty, to stay with the problem, predicted their eventual success more than IQ or test scores. This challenges a common belief in Western culture that talent is everything, that some people are just naturally gifted while others are not. But in reality, the willingness to keep going, to try and fail and try again, is often the true difference maker. This lesson plays out far beyond academics. Consider entrepreneurs, athletes, artists. The ones who rise are not always the most talented at first. But they are the ones who keep showing up. They improve. They adjust. They outlast the rest. This idea even appears in the lives of some of the most successful people in history. Take Bill Gates, for instance. Yes, he had early access to computers, which was rare at the time. But more importantly, he spent thousands of hours programming, often late into the night. His early success was not just luck, it was long hours of hard work, made possible by his unique environment. Hard work, when applied consistently and with purpose, becomes more than just labor, it becomes craftsmanship. And over time, craftsmanship leads to mastery. But here is the twist: not everyone has the opportunity to work hard in the same way. A student whose parents are struggling financially may have less time to study. A child growing up in chaos may not have the quiet space to concentrate. Gladwell reminds us that while hard work matters, it thrives best when opportunity meets discipline. And that is where society comes in. If we want more people to succeed, we must do more than tell them to work harder. We must build systems that support that effort. We must create environments where persistence is rewarded, where help is available, and where people are taught from a young age that struggle is part of growth, not a sign to stop. So what does this mean for you? It means that your ability to succeed may not lie in being the smartest or the fastest, but in how long you are willing to stay in the game. It means your background, your family stories, and even your cultural values have already shaped the way you approach difficulty. And if you recognize that, you can use it or you can change it. Because the legacy of hard work is not just history, it is fuel. And when combined with passion, direction, and opportunity, it can take you farther than you ever imagined. Part 7, Redefining Success. We have grown up believing that success is simple: work hard, be smart, and never give up. But what if that definition is incomplete? What if the real story of success is far more layered, a mixture of timing, culture, background, and effort? In this final part, we look at how Outliers redefines what it means to be successful and what it means to be human. Let us begin with a powerful truth: no one makes it alone. Behind every achievement is a trail of people, chances, and cultural factors that made it possible. Think of the Beatles. They did not just become great by accident. They performed over 1,200 times in Hamburg, Germany, often for 8 hours straight, long before they became famous. It was a unique opportunity to practice, and it shaped them into legends. Or take the story of Chris Langan, a man with an IQ higher than Einstein's. Despite his genius, he struggled to find success. Why? Because raw intelligence was not enough. He lacked the social tools and background needed to navigate the system. Compare that to someone like Robert Oppenheimer, who also faced obstacles but managed to rise because he knew how to speak the language of power and authority. Their stories show that context is just as important as talent. This idea is not meant to downplay personal responsibility. It is meant to expand our understanding. Success is not a solo climb, it is a shared journey. Yes, it takes grit. Yes, it takes skill. But it also takes doors being open at the right time and someone showing you how to walk through them. So how do we redefine success? First, we stop pretending it is purely about merit. We recognize that where and when you are born, the support you receive, and even your cultural inheritance, all of it matters. A child born into poverty may have all the talent in the world, but without access to education or safety or mentorship, their light may never fully shine. And yet, give them just one opportunity, one open door, and everything can change. Second, we reframe how we view effort. In a culture obsessed with natural talent, we must return to the truth: greatness is grown, not gifted. Those 10,000 hours. They do not happen by magic. They happen through sacrifice, repetition, and support. If we celebrate the result but ignore the path, we miss the whole story. Third, we shift from judgment to empathy. When someone falls behind, we do not say, "They did not try hard enough." We ask, "Did they have the same chances?" Because the playing field is not equal, and success does not emerge in a vacuum. It grows from soil that is often richer for some than others. And finally, we begin to notice the outliers all around us, not just the billionaires or the prodigies, but the quiet success stories. The immigrant who builds a future from nothing. The student who works after school and still manages to top the class. The teacher who sees potential in a kid that no one else believed in. These are the people redefining success every day. Gladwell's message is not just about understanding the winners of the world. It is about changing how we help more people become winners, not by lowering the standards, but by raising the opportunities. So if you are listening and wondering whether you can rise, remember this: your story is still being written. Yes, some paths are smoother than others. But knowing the factors behind success allows you to work smarter, seek help more intentionally, and create your own turning points. You are not limited by where you started. But your journey will be shaped by what you believe is possible and what you do to make it happen. In the end, being an outlier is not about being born extraordinary. It is about what happens when potential meets possibility, when effort meets environment, and when timing meets preparation. Redefining success means seeing the full picture. And once you do, you realize greatness is not an accident. It is a story. A story built on choices, chances, and the courage to continue. Success is often viewed as a mystery, a rare spark of brilliance, a product of genius, or a stroke of luck. But the real story, as we have seen, is deeper and more human. Behind every outlier is a chain of unseen influences: family, culture, timing, opportunities, and effort. No one becomes great in isolation. What outliers teaches us is not to envy the successful, but to understand them. To realize that their path was shaped by more than just their choices. And once we understand that, we can begin to shape our own paths with more clarity, compassion, and determination. Whether you are just starting out or somewhere in the middle of your journey, remember this: the road to success is not always fair, but it is always possible. With grit, self-awareness, and the right support, you can tilt the odds in your favor. Thank you for listening to Outliers on Books Arena. Let this not be the end of a story, but the start of your own. Because the world needs more outliers, and one of them might just be you. Welcome to Books Arena. Today we are diving into the best-selling book Mindset, The New Psychology of Success by Carol S. Dweck. This book explores a simple but life-changing idea: the way you think about your abilities can shape your entire future. Carol Dweck, a renowned psychologist from Stanford University, explains that people generally operate from one of two mindsets: a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. A fixed mindset means you believe your talents and intelligence are set in stone. A growth mindset means you believe your abilities can be developed through effort and learning. This concept is not just theory, it plays out in the real world every day. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team but used that failure to fuel years of intense training. Thomas Edison failed over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. Even in academics, students who embrace a growth mindset tend to improve faster and stay more motivated. This book isn't just about success in school or sports, it applies to parenting, business, and relationships too. In this video, we'll break down the main ideas of the book and show how changing your mindset can change your life. Let's begin. Part 1: Understanding the Two Mindsets. Carol Dweck opens the book with one central idea: the mindset you adopt shapes your entire life. She explains that there are two basic mindsets: the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. A fixed mindset is the belief that your intelligence, talent, and personality are fixed traits. You're either smart or not, good at something or not, and that won't change. People with this mindset avoid challenges, fear failure, and feel the need to constantly prove themselves. They believe that if they struggle, it means they're not naturally talented. In contrast, a growth mindset is the belief that your abilities can be developed through effort, learning, and persistence. People with this mindset embrace challenges, learn from mistakes, and see effort as the path to mastery. They believe that talent is just a starting point and improvement is always possible. This difference in mindset leads to very different behaviors in the real world. For example, Dweck shares how students praised for being smart often avoid difficult problems. They fear looking dumb if they fail. But students praised for their effort are more willing to try harder tasks, learn from mistakes, and grow over time. In one study, 5th graders were asked to solve puzzles. After finishing an easy set, some were praised for their intelligence: you must be smart at this. Others were praised for effort: you must have worked hard. When given a choice, most of the kids praised for intelligence chose an easier task. Those praised for effort chose the harder one. Why? Because they weren't afraid of failing, they saw challenge as a chance to grow. This same idea plays out beyond school. In sports, Athletes with a growth mindset tend to become great because they focus on learning, training, and adapting. Michael Jordan was famously cut from his high school basketball team. A person with a fixed mindset might have quit. But he trained harder, built his skills, and went on to become one of the greatest players of all time. In business, Dweck compares leaders who succeed through learning and humility with those who fail because of ego. She shows how fixed mindset leaders resist feedback and fear looking wrong, while growth mindset leaders value improvement and surround themselves with people who challenge them. Even in personal relationships, mindset matters. People with a fixed mindset often see conflict or criticism as proof they're not lovable or good enough. People with a growth mindset view these moments as chances to understand, grow, and build stronger bonds. In Chapter 2, titled Inside the Mindsets, Dweck goes deeper into the psychology behind these two attitudes. She explains that people with a fixed mindset judge themselves constantly. They want to be seen as smart, talented, or successful, and they feel threatened by anything that challenges that image. They see effort as a weakness, and failure as proof they're not good enough. Meanwhile, people with a growth mindset are focused on learning. They don't panic when they fail. They reflect, adjust, and keep going. They understand that every expert was once a beginner. Every skill can be improved through practice, patience, and feedback. A powerful concept Dweck introduces here is the word yet. When a student says, "I can't do this," adding the word yet changes everything. "I can't do this," yet turns failure into a future possibility. It opens the door to learning and hope. This small word helps people shift from seeing failure as a dead end to seeing it as a stepping stone. The mindset you hold also affects how you see others. People with a fixed mindset often judge others harshly. They see traits like intelligence or talent as fixed, so they label people quickly. But those with a growth mindset are more open. They believe others can change, improve, and surprise them. Dweck emphasizes that these mindsets are not personality types. They're patterns of thought. And the good news is, mindsets can change. By becoming aware of how you respond to challenges, feedback, and failure, you can start shifting toward a growth mindset. She makes it clear the goal is not to be positive all the time or pretend everything is easy. The growth mindset is about facing the truth, embracing struggle, and staying focused on learning over proving. By the end of Chapter 2, one thing is clear: the way you think about your abilities becomes the way you live your life. Coming up next, we'll explore how this mindset affects achievement and why talent alone is never enough. Part 2, the truth about ability and accomplishment. Imagine two young kids sitting in a classroom. One of them, let's call her Maya, always hears that she's smart. Every time she finishes a test quickly, adults say, "You're so clever." She starts to believe that being smart means never struggling. Now picture another child. His name is Leo. Whenever he works hard and finishes something tough, his teacher tells him, "That must have taken effort. Great job sticking with it." Leo begins to associate effort with success. As the years go by, Maya avoids the harder math problems. She's afraid to look like she doesn't know the answer. If she tries and fails, what will happen to her smart image? Leo, on the other hand, chooses the tougher questions. Sometimes he gets them wrong, but each time, he learns something new. He doesn't feel like a failure, he feels like a work in progress. This is exactly what Carol Dweck explores in Chapter 3 of her book, The Relationship Between Ability, Achievement, and Mindset. For years, people believed that talent was everything. That success belonged to the naturally gifted, the ones who started ahead, who just had it. But through her research, Dweck discovered something different. She followed thousands of students through school and found that natural talent didn't guarantee long-term success. In fact, students with a growth mindset, even those who started behind, often outperformed those with high test scores but fixed beliefs. There's a story Dweck tells about a young boy named Jonathan. He wasn't the top of his class. In fact, he struggled with some subjects. But he had something powerful: he loved learning. He didn't shy away from feedback. He didn't get discouraged by mistakes. Years later, he became a top engineer, not because he was born brilliant, but because he refused to stop improving. This isn't just about kids. Think about professional athletes. Some are born with incredible physical gifts, but they don't all become great. Why? Because they expect success to come easily. When it doesn't, they give up or blame others. Then there are athletes like Serena Williams or Kobe Bryant, people who pushed themselves, practiced endlessly, and treated failure as fuel. Their talent mattered, yes. But their mindset mattered more. In business, too, Dweck highlights a striking example: Enron, the energy company that collapsed in scandal. Enron hired people based on how smart they seemed. They praised natural brilliance. But the company avoided honest feedback. Leaders didn't want to admit mistakes. They focused on image over improvement, and it all came crashing down. Compare that to companies like Microsoft in the early 2000s, where CEO Satya Nadella shifted the culture to one that valued growth, learning, and honest self-reflection. That change in mindset helped transform the company. Even artists and writers fall into this trap. Many aspiring creators think talent is enough, that if something doesn't come easily, they're not cut out for it. But if you look closely at successful creators, you'll see hours of unseen work. Rewriting. Practicing. Failing. Trying again. Dweck tells the story of Yo-Yo Ma, one of the world's most famous cellists. He wasn't just born gifted. He practiced intensely, constantly seeking feedback. When he made mistakes in concerts, he used those moments to refine his skill, not to question his worth. So what does all this mean? It means we need to stop asking, "Am I good at this?" and start asking, "How can I get better at this?" That shift from judging to learning is the core of the growth mindset. Dweck also explains that even people who believe in growth on paper often hold fixed beliefs deep down. Maybe you believe others can improve, but secretly think you're not a math person or not a leader. These beliefs hide in the background and quietly limit us. But here's the truth: nobody starts out great. We build greatness step by step, with effort, with curiosity, and with the willingness to look at failure as part of the process. When people believe their qualities can grow, they take control of their path. And when people believe their success depends only on talent, they give up control. They let fear of failure decide how far they go. By the end of this chapter, Dweck wants us to stop seeing ability as something you either have or don't. Instead, ability is something you develop. And that development depends more on mindset than on talent. So whether you're a student, an athlete, a leader, or just someone trying to grow, remember this: it's not about where you start. It's about how you think, how you respond, and how much you're willing to learn. In the next part, we'll look at how mindset affects the world of sports and how champions are made not by talent alone, but by relentless growth. Part 3, The Mindset of Champions. Picture a young boy in high school, standing on the edge of a basketball court, staring at a list posted on the gym door. His name isn't on it. He's been cut from the team. Most kids would feel humiliated. Some might quit, thinking they're just not good enough. But this boy didn't quit. He went home, cried, then got up the next morning and trained harder than ever before. That boy was Michael Jordan. Many people think Jordan was born to be great. But the truth is, what made him great wasn't just talent. It was his mindset. His determination to keep growing. To get better, even after failure. Especially after failure. In Mindset, Carol Dweck dedicates an entire chapter to athletes and performers. She asks, what separates the good from the truly great? The answer isn't natural ability. It's the growth mindset. Athletes with a fixed mindset believe their talent defines them. If they perform well, they feel worthy. But when they make mistakes or lose a game, they feel ashamed. They think they've hit the ceiling of their ability. They often avoid challenges that might expose their weaknesses. They want to look good rather than get better. But athletes with a growth mindset view the game differently. They see every practice, every mistake, every injury as part of the journey. They crave feedback. They seek challenges. They play to improve, not just to prove. Dweck gives the example of Muhammad Ali. He wasn't the fastest or strongest fighter in his early days. Many experts underestimated him. But what he lacked in raw power, he made up for in mental strength. He studied his opponents, trained smart, and adjusted his style. He believed he could always improve, and that mindset made him unstoppable. Another powerful story comes from Jackie Joyner-Kersee, one of the greatest female athletes in track and field history. She didn't come from privilege. She battled asthma and injuries. But she never saw those things as limits. She saw them as challenges to overcome. She trained relentlessly, always looking for ways to grow stronger, faster, better. Compare that to athletes who rise quickly and then fall. Dweck talks about tennis star John McEnroe, who had massive talent but a fixed mindset. He hated losing. He blamed others, the umpire, the crowd, the weather. He didn't focus on learning from defeat. And that mindset held him back from becoming even greater. This pattern shows up everywhere in sports. The fixed mindset says, I win because I'm better. The growth mindset says, I win because I worked harder, trained smarter, and stayed hungry to improve. It's not just individuals. Teams and coaches carry these mindsets too. Dweck writes about Bobby Knight, the fiery basketball coach known for his temper and authoritarian style. He demanded perfection. But when things didn't go his way, he didn't adapt, he exploded. His mindset was fixed. He believed success came from control and dominance. Now contrast him with John Wooden, the legendary UCLA coach who won 10 NCAA championships. Wooden focused less on winning and more on preparation, effort, and consistency. He treated failure as feedback. He emphasized progress over perfection. He built champions by teaching them to focus on growth, not just the scoreboard. What's remarkable is that athletes with a growth mindset don't just perform better, they enjoy the game more. They feel more in control. They know they can shape their future, no matter their starting point. Even injuries don't derail them. Take Tom Brady, who was drafted late, overlooked, and doubted. But he kept learning. Kept adjusting. He didn't let rejection define him, he used it to fuel his development. Or Simone Biles, who faced enormous pressure, public scrutiny, and personal struggles. She made difficult choices, prioritized mental health, and continued evolving as an athlete and person. That's the growth mindset in action, the belief that your worth isn't just tied to performance, but to how you grow through difficulty. So what does this mean for anyone watching who isn't a professional athlete? It means you can approach your goals the same way. Whether you're training for a marathon, learning a new sport, or just trying to improve your fitness, the key is to stop asking, am I good at this, and start asking, how can I improve today? You don't need to be the best. You just need to be better than you were yesterday. You won't grow if you fear failure. You grow when you use failure to learn, adjust, and push forward. In the world of sports, greatness isn't born. It's built through mindset, grit, and love of the game. And just like on the court, the same rules apply to your career, your relationships, and your life. In the next part, we'll shift from sports to something equally personal: your self-image, your personality, and the question, can people really change? Part 4, can people really change? Let's take a moment and think about the word personality. Most people think of it as fixed, like eye color or height. You're either confident or shy. You're either introverted or outgoing. You're either emotionally strong or you're not. But what if that's not true? What if personality, just like talent or intelligence, is something that can grow? Carol Dweck dives into this idea in Chapter 5, and what she reveals is both surprising and deeply hopeful. She starts by telling the story of a young girl named Emily. In school, Emily was always described as shy. Teachers called her quiet, hesitant, even nervous. Eventually, Emily started to believe it. She stopped speaking up, even when she had something important to say. She thought, that's just who I am. Years later, in college, she had a professor who didn't label her. Instead, he encouraged her to lead a group project. At first, Emily panicked. But with each meeting, she got a little more comfortable. By the end of the term, she was leading discussions and mentoring younger students. What changed? Not Emily's personality, but her belief about what was possible. That's the power of mindset. Dweck explains that when people believe their personality is fixed, they avoid situations that might challenge their identity. If they think they are not good with people, they avoid networking. If they think they are too emotional, they stop trying to manage conflict. This creates a loop: beliefs limit behavior, and limited behavior reinforces those beliefs. But when people believe their personality can develop, everything shifts. They see social skills, confidence, resilience not as traits, but as skills. And like any skill, they can be learned, practiced, and improved. Dweck shares several stories of people who broke out of their fixed identity. One woman, in her early 30s, had always struggled with anger. She thought it was just who she was, someone with a short fuse. But after reading about mindset, she started tracking her triggers, practicing mindfulness, and learning how to communicate more calmly. Over time, she changed how she reacted. Not because she suppressed her feelings, but because she learned new ways to manage them. Another man believed he was just bad at relationships. Every time a conflict came up, he would shut down or walk away. But once he began to approach relationships as something he could grow into, not something he had to be perfect at, he started asking questions, listening more, and opening up emotionally. His relationships improved because he improved. Dweck also talks about the danger of labels. When we label ourselves or others, we stop looking for potential. We start assigning blame. We say things like, she's just insecure or he's just a control freak, instead of asking, what might help this person grow? Think of how this plays out in families. A child who's always called the difficult one might carry that label for life. But with a growth mindset, parents can shift the conversation. Instead of saying, you're being bad, they can say, you're still learning how to handle frustration. That message gives the child a path forward and helps them believe they're not stuck. Even in adult relationships, mindset plays a huge role. When couples believe that love should be effortless, they often fall apart when things get hard. But couples who understand that relationships require growth, communication, and work tend to last longer and feel more fulfilled. They don't avoid problems. They grow through them. Carol Dweck doesn't pretend that change is easy. But she shows that it's possible, and even more, that it's normal. One of the most powerful lessons from this chapter is that struggle doesn't mean failure. It means you're in the process of growth. So if you've ever felt stuck in your personality, like you're too quiet, too reactive, too insecure, too anxious, remember, that's not a permanent identity. It's just a place on the path. And with the right mindset, you can keep walking. She also reminds us that changing our view of ourselves helps us change how we see others. Instead of judging people as toxic or lazy or weak, we begin to see them as humans in progress. That doesn't mean tolerating harmful behavior, it means recognizing that people have the capacity to evolve. And when we expect growth from ourselves and from others, we create space for it to happen. By the end of this chapter, the message is clear. You are not defined by your worst habits. You are not limited by your past. You are not trapped in your personality. You are still becoming. In the next part, we'll explore how this mindset plays out in relationships, how love, trust, and conflict all shift when we believe that people can grow. Part 5, Mindset and Relationships, Love That Grows. Imagine two people in a new relationship. At first, everything feels perfect. They like the same music. They finish each other's sentences. They laugh at the same jokes. But then one day, they have a disagreement. It's not even about something big, just a miscommunication. One person pulls away. The other feels hurt. Suddenly, the thought creeps in, maybe we're not meant for each other. That's where Carol Dweck says mindset matters more than we realize. When people enter relationships with a fixed mindset, they believe that love is either meant to be or it isn't. They think, if we argue, it must mean something is wrong. If I have to work at this, it must not be real love. And so, they give up too soon. But people with a growth mindset see relationships differently. They expect challenges. They believe love can deepen with effort. That conflict doesn't signal the end, it's just part of the journey. Dweck shares stories from couples who struggled, fought, even nearly broke up, but because they believed in growing together, they came out stronger. Not because they were perfect for each other, but because they worked for each other. One couple, for example, had different communication styles. One was direct, the other more reserved. They often misunderstood each other. But instead of saying, this isn't working, they asked, how can we learn to understand each other better? Over time, they built a shared language of patience and trust. That's the growth mindset in action, not just in school or sports, but in love. Dweck also explains that mindset affects how we see ourselves within relationships. People with a fixed mindset often fear vulnerability. They think, if I show my flaws, I'll lose love. So they hide, they pretend, or they become defensive. This fear of being judged keeps them from forming real, lasting bonds. But in a growth mindset, people feel safer showing their imperfections. They're not afraid to say, I was wrong, or I don't know how to fix this yet. They trust that the relationship can grow through honesty, not despite it. Think about how this applies to friendships. Maybe you've had a friend who made a mistake, broke your trust, said something hurtful, or drifted away. A fixed mindset might say, they'll never change. But a growth mindset asks, is this a relationship worth repairing? Can we both learn from what happened? Not all relationships should be saved, of course. But many break not because of the issue but because people stop believing change is possible. There's also the danger of labeling in relationships. Dweck points out how easy it is to say things like, he's just bad at commitment, or she's too emotional. These labels sound final. They shut the door on growth. But growth mindset invites a different kind of language. It says, he's still learning how to open up, or she's working on managing her reactions. That shift might seem small, but it changes everything. It gives people room to improve, instead of locking them into identity boxes. Dweck also talks about revenge and forgiveness. In a fixed mindset, people often hold on to grudges. They believe if someone hurt them once, they'll always be that way. They want justice, not resolution. But in a growth mindset, there's room for second chances. Not blind forgiveness, but forgiveness rooted in the belief that people can learn from mistakes and grow. Even parent-child relationships are shaped by this. A parent with a fixed mindset might say, my child is lazy, or he'll never be disciplined. But a growth-minded parent says, my child hasn't developed strong habits yet, or we're still working on self-control. That mindset affects how a child sees themselves and how much they believe in their own potential. The same goes for romantic partners. When you believe your partner is stuck, that they'll never listen better, never change how they react, never support you the way you need, you stop expecting growth. You stop encouraging it. And eventually, you stop trying. But when you believe people evolve, you hold space for that evolution. It doesn't mean tolerating hurtful behavior. Growth mindset doesn't mean staying in toxic situations. But it does mean giving people, including ourselves, the opportunity to do better, learn more, and become stronger. Dweck emphasizes that strong relationships are built, not found. Love isn't something we fall into. It's something we build, together, day by day, with communication, understanding, patience, and yes, effort. So if you've ever thought, why is this so hard? Shouldn't love be easy? Know this, hard doesn't mean broken. Hard often just means human. And humans, thankfully, are capable of change. In the next part, we'll explore how mindset shapes parenting, teaching, and leadership, and why the way we praise others could be doing more harm than good. Part 6, Raising Potential, Mindset in Parenting, Teaching, and Leadership. Imagine a child comes home from school holding a math test. He hands it to his mom. She looks at the grade, a perfect 100, and smiles. "You're so smart," she says. The child beams. But next week, when the test is harder, he hesitates. He doesn't want to try something new because if he fails, maybe he won't seem smart anymore. This, Carol Dweck explains, is where praise can go wrong. In Chapter 7 of Mindset, she dives into how our words, as parents, teachers, and leaders, shape not just motivation but a person's entire belief system about growth, success, and self-worth. When we praise people for their intelligence, they start believing their value comes from being naturally gifted. This creates a fixed mindset. They begin to avoid challenges because they fear failure will make them look less smart. But when we praise effort, strategy, or persistence, people develop a growth mindset. They believe their abilities can be developed through hard work. They see mistakes as part of learning, not as proof they're not good enough. Dweck tells the story of a kindergarten teacher named Mrs. Wilson. She used to call her top students geniuses. But over time, she noticed those students became more anxious, less willing to take risks. Meanwhile, other kids who struggled early on but were praised for effort grew bolder and more confident. Eventually, Mrs. Wilson changed her approach, no more praise for being smart. Instead, she praised things like, "I saw how you tried a different way," or "you really stuck with it." The results were dramatic. More kids took on challenges, asked deeper questions, and became more resilient. This lesson applies to parenting too. Dweck describes how parents with a fixed mindset often label their children. They say things like, "He's the athletic one," or "She's the creative one." These labels might sound harmless, even positive. But they create invisible limits. When the athletic child struggles academically, he might think, "I'm just not smart." When the creative child hits a block, she might think, "I guess I'm not that talented after all." Growth-minded parents take a different approach. Instead of labeling, they focus on effort, strategies, and progress. They say, "I noticed how much time you spent figuring that out. or you made a mistake, and you kept going, that's what matters. These kinds of comments help kids believe that skills are built, not born. The same principle applies in leadership, whether it's in business, sports, or education. Dweck gives the example of Enron, once a corporate giant. The company hired only those they believed were the smartest in the room. Their entire culture rewarded natural brilliance. But when things got tough, no one asked hard questions. No one wanted to appear weak. In the end, the company collapsed, partly because it had built a culture where learning, growth, and humility were seen as weaknesses. Now contrast that with a leader like Lou Gerstner, who helped turn around IBM. Gerstner didn't come in with a big ego or quick fixes. Instead, he listened. He admitted what he didn't know. He encouraged teams to take ownership and grow. Under his leadership, people started solving problems not to impress anyone, but to actually improve the company. That's the power of growth mindset leadership. In the classroom, Dweck shares the story of a middle school math teacher in the Bronx. His students came in years behind grade level. Instead of lowering expectations, he told them, "You're not there yet, but we're going to get there together." That small word yet changed everything. Students stopped seeing failure as final. They began to see it as a step in the process. By the end of the year, most of those students were performing at or above grade level. Not because they were more talented, but because someone believed they could grow. Mindset also influences how people handle setbacks in leadership roles. Leaders with a fixed mindset take failure personally. They hide mistakes, blame others, or try to protect their image. But leaders with a growth mindset admit when things go wrong. They ask, "What can we learn from this?" They create a culture where feedback is welcomed, not feared. This doesn't mean growth-minded leaders are soft. In fact, they often hold high standards. But their goal is development, not just perfection. One of the most powerful takeaways from this chapter is this: how we talk to others shapes how they see themselves. A teacher who says, "You're brilliant," might unintentionally make a student afraid of failing. But a teacher who says, "You worked hard and found a way through a tough problem," helps that student build grit. A boss who says, "You're a natural leader," might make someone play it safe to protect their status. But a boss who says, "I saw how you listened deeply and helped the team solve that challenge," builds real confidence, confidence that lasts. Whether you're a parent, teacher, coach, or manager, your mindset sends a message. Are you telling people they must prove themselves or that they can grow themselves? In the next and final part, we'll look at how to truly change your own mindset and how to put everything you've learned into practice, starting today. Part 7, How to Change Your Mindset and Change Your Life. So now we come to the question that matters most. Can you actually change your mindset? The answer, Carol Dweck says, is a clear and powerful yes. But like anything else worth doing, it doesn't happen all at once. Mindset is not a switch. It's more like a muscle. You build it by using it, by noticing, by challenging, and by choosing a new way to think when the old one wants to take over. In this final chapter of Mindset, Dweck shares real stories of people who transformed not just how they thought but how they lived. One story is about Elizabeth, a university student who always avoided hard classes. She wanted to keep her perfect GPA. One day, she overheard a professor say, "If you never fail, you're not really learning." That single sentence made her stop and think. She realized she'd been living inside a fixed mindset where success meant never struggling. The next semester, she signed up for a course that scared her. She didn't get an A, but she learned more than ever before. More importantly, she realized, growth felt better than perfection. That's what changing your mindset looks like. Small choices. Different questions. A shift from protecting your image, to building your ability. Dweck suggests starting with awareness. You begin by simply listening to your own thoughts. When you hit a challenge, do you think, "I can't do this"? Or do you say, "I can't do this yet"? When someone criticizes you, do you feel attacked? Or do you ask, "What can I learn from this"? That small difference between final judgment and ongoing growth is everything. Another key idea is understanding that mindset is not all or nothing. Nobody is in a perfect growth mindset all the time. We all have areas where we still fear judgment, where we want to look smart or talented instead of vulnerable and learning. What matters is catching those moments and choosing differently. One executive Dweck worked with used to shut down when his team gave him feedback. He thought it made him look weak. But after learning about mindset, he started saying, "Thank you for helping me grow." Over time, his team became more open, more creative, and more successful because their leader was willing to evolve. That's how real change starts. Dweck also offers practical tools for shifting mindset in daily life. Replace judgment with curiosity. When you mess up, don't ask, "What's wrong with me?" Ask, "What can I try next time?" Normalize mistakes. Instead of hiding failure, share it. Talk about what you learned. Model that for your kids, your friends, your co-workers. Use the word yet. This tiny word opens a door. I'm not good at this, yet. I don't understand it, yet. It turns failure into a path forward. Celebrate effort, not just results. Whether you're parenting, teaching, or leading, reward persistence, creativity, and progress, not just natural ability or fast success. These shifts don't just change what we do. They change how we see ourselves. Because mindset isn't just about achievement. It's about identity. In a fixed mindset, we believe our abilities define us. In a growth mindset, we believe our choices shape us. One is based on fear. The other is built on hope. That's why this book isn't just about success. It's about freedom. The freedom to try. The freedom to grow. The freedom to stop performing and start becoming. Dweck shares one final story that captures this perfectly. A man in his 50s had spent his life feeling like a failure. He'd never gone to college. He'd worked the same job for 30 years. One day, his daughter gave him a copy of Mindset. He read it slowly, unsure at first. But one idea hit him hard: you're not too old to grow. That year, he enrolled in community college. He started writing. He learned to play guitar. He didn't become rich or famous, but he became something more important. He became free. Free to learn. Free to change. Free to become the version of himself he'd always thought was out of reach. That's the real message of this book. You are not stuck. You are not too late. And you are not finished. Wherever you are in life, whether you're a student, a parent, a leader, or someone just trying to get better, growth is possible. You just have to believe it's worth the work. So the next time you face a challenge, remember this. It's not about being the smartest, the fastest, or the best. It's about showing up, staying open, and growing forward. Because success is not something you're born with. It's something you build. One choice at a time. One effort at a time. One mindset shift at a time. If you found this breakdown helpful, subscribe to Books Arena for more powerful book summaries that can change how you think, work, and live. Because the right book at the right time can unlock your next chapter. See you in the next video. Welcome to Books Arena. Sometimes, the smallest actions can set the tone for your entire day and even change your life. Imagine this: you wake up in the morning, and the first thing you do is make your bed. A simple task, yes, but it is more powerful than it seems. Admiral William H. McRaven, a Navy SEAL with decades of military experience, discovered that success often begins with small, consistent habits. Making your bed is not just about tidiness, it is about discipline, pride, and starting your day with a win. It is a reminder that even in chaos, you can take control of something. Life will throw challenges at you. There will be days when you feel overwhelmed, when problems seem too big to handle. But McRaven teaches us that facing life's challenges is like surviving SEAL training. It is about resilience, teamwork, and never quitting, no matter how tough it gets. These lessons are not just for soldiers, they are for everyone. Whether you are a student, a professional, a parent, or someone chasing a dream, the principles in Make Your Bed can help you face difficulties, make better choices, and build a life of purpose. Today, we will explore these lessons: practical, tough, and proven in the harshest environments. By the end, you will see how small things, done right, can transform your life in big ways. Part 1: Start your day with a task completed. The alarm goes off. It is early. The kind of early when the world is still quiet, and the sun has not yet stretched across the horizon. You swing your legs out of bed, your mind still heavy with sleep. And then, you make your bed. It sounds simple, even trivial. Yet, in that single action, you have already accomplished something. You have brought order to one small corner of your world. For Admiral McRaven, during his Navy SEAL training, this was not just a matter of neatness, it was the first lesson of discipline. Every morning, without fail, every trainee was expected to make their bed perfectly. Corners tucked tight. Pillow centered. Sheets pulled flat enough to bounce a coin. At first, it felt unnecessary. Why obsess over something so minor when you are being trained for some of the most dangerous and demanding missions in the world? But soon, McRaven understood, making your bed was about more than the bed. It was about starting the day with a small victory. In the chaos of SEAL training, when days were filled with grueling physical tasks, freezing water, and impossible expectations, this one simple habit gave a sense of control. No matter how hard the day became, no matter how many things went wrong, that bed would be waiting for you at the end of it, neat, clean, and a reminder that you had completed at least one task. The beauty of this lesson is that it applies far beyond the military. Think about mornings when you rush out of the house without any sense of order. The day often feels scattered from the start. Now imagine beginning with an intentional act, however small, that tells your brain, I can set things in motion. It is a psychological boost, a signal to yourself that you are capable of taking control. It is not just about tidiness, it is about momentum. A small win creates the mindset for bigger wins. Completing one task gives you the confidence to tackle the next. It builds a chain of accomplishments that carry through the day. There is also a deeper message: life is often made up of small acts. We tend to wait for grand moments to feel a sense of achievement, the big promotion, the dream house, the milestone celebration. But real success is built daily, in small, repeated actions. The discipline to complete the simple things builds the strength to face the hard things. McRaven once said that if you cannot do the little things right, you will never be able to do the big things right. And he is correct. Attention to detail in the small areas of life, whether it is making your bed, arriving on time, or finishing a small task you promised, shapes your ability to handle larger challenges with precision and care. There will be days when life feels messy, unpredictable, and far from perfect. On those days, you may not be able to fix every problem. But you can make your bed. You can remind yourself that you still have the power to take a small step forward. And sometimes, that is enough to change the course of your day. So start tomorrow differently. When you wake up, do not just leave your bed undone. Make it. Take pride in that simple accomplishment. And let it be the first victory of many. Because when you learn to begin each day with a task completed, you build the foundation for a life filled with discipline, purpose, and resilience. Part 2, you can't go it alone. No matter how strong, skilled, or determined you think you are, life will test you in ways you cannot face alone. This is one of the earliest and hardest truths Admiral McRaven learned during Navy SEAL training. The ocean is unforgiving, the physical challenges are relentless, and the instructors push you to the edge of your endurance, all to teach you that survival and success depend on the people beside you. One of the most vivid examples comes from the small rubber boats the trainees carried everywhere. Each team had to carry these heavy boats over their heads during long runs across sand and into pounding surf. Alone, the weight would crush you. Together, with 6 or 7 others lifting, it became manageable. But this teamwork went far beyond sharing physical burdens. In the icy waters off Coronado, California, trainees would link arms in the surf, shivering through what was called surf torture. The cold bit into their bones, the waves crashed over their heads, and their bodies screamed to quit. But when one man faltered, the others would whisper encouragement or shout over the roar of the ocean to keep going. Alone, it would have been impossible. Together, they made it through. McRaven's point is clear: in life, there will be moments when the weight you carry feels unbearable. That weight might be grief, failure, financial hardship, illness, or uncertainty. And in those moments, you need your team, your friends, family, mentors, colleagues, or even strangers who become allies. The myth of the self-made person is exactly that, a myth. Every success story has behind it a network of support, advice, and encouragement. Even the most independent achievers relied on someone: a teacher who believed in them, a parent who sacrificed, a partner who stood by them. Relying on others does not make you weak, it makes you human. Strength is not just about endurance, it is about connection. The bonds we form through trust, loyalty, and shared struggle are what give us the courage to keep moving when everything in us wants to stop. This lesson also goes both ways: just as you will need help, you will be called to give it. There will be times when you are the one holding the boat, carrying the extra weight, or lending your strength to someone else's fight. And those moments are just as important, because they strengthen the bonds of trust that you may one day rely upon. If you look closely at the most resilient people, you will notice something: they do not stand alone. They stand with others, and others stand with them. That unity is their secret weapon. So ask yourself, who is in your boat? Who will help carry the weight when life gets heavy? And equally important, whose boat are you helping to carry? Because no matter how skilled you are, no matter how disciplined you become, you will face moments where you simply cannot go it alone. And in those moments, the strength of your team will determine your ability to succeed. Part 3, Only the size of your heart matters. In Navy SEAL training, one of the first things that stood out to Admiral McRaven was how often the smallest men in the group outperformed the biggest. The instructors had a group they affectionately called the Munchkin Crew. None of them were over 5'5", and yet, day after day, they beat taller, stronger men in grueling challenges. One of these challenges was paddling the heavy rubber boats through rough surf. The Munchkin Crew's boat was lighter because its occupants weighed less, but what really gave them the edge was not physics, it was pure determination. They paddled in perfect rhythm, shouting encouragement to one another, never letting the waves intimidate them. While bigger trainees in other boats wasted time arguing or complaining, the Munchkin Crew pushed forward, united and relentless. This lesson went beyond the beach. McRaven realized that physical size, appearance, or background had little to do with success in the most demanding situations. What mattered was the size of a person's heart, their courage, grit, and refusal to give up when things got tough. In the civilian world, this lesson is equally powerful. We often judge people too quickly based on what we see: their resume, their height, their voice, their appearance. But life's most important victories come not from surface traits, but from the unseen qualities: resilience, integrity, and the willingness to fight for a goal even when the odds are against you. Think about people who have changed the course of history. Many of them were underestimated at first. Mahatma Gandhi was not physically imposing, yet his moral courage moved millions. Helen Keller could neither see nor hear, but her determination inspired generations. Malala Yousafzai was a young girl from a small town, but her bravery made her a global voice for education. None of these individuals relied on physical dominance, they relied on the size of their hearts. McRaven's lesson is a reminder to never underestimate others and to never underestimate yourself. You may not be the fastest, the strongest, or the loudest in the room, but if you have the will to keep going, to learn, and to contribute no matter the circumstances, you can outlast and outperform those who seem more naturally gifted. This also changes the way we see challenges. If you believe that success is reserved for the biggest or the best, you might give up before you start. But if you understand that perseverance and heart can outweigh raw talent, you realize that the playing field is far more level than it appears. And there is another side to this lesson: when you are in a position to lead, never judge your team members by appearances. Look deeper. The quietest person may be the most thoughtful problem solver. The one with the least experience may have the greatest drive to improve. The smallest in stature may have the biggest courage when the moment demands it. In life's rough seas, the size of your boat crew does not matter nearly as much as the size of their spirit. And the same is true for you. Whatever obstacle lies ahead, it is the heart you bring to the fight that will determine how far you go. Part 4, Get over being a sugar cookie. In Navy SEAL training, there was a punishment dreaded by every trainee: the sugar cookie. It was not about dessert, it was about discomfort. If an instructor decided you had messed up, maybe your bed was not made perfectly, or your uniform was not spotless, you were ordered to run fully clothed into the cold ocean, soak yourself to the bone, then roll in the sand until every inch of you was covered. Once you looked like a breaded cutlet, you had to spend the rest of the day that way, wet, gritty, and chafing. The worst part? Sometimes you were made a sugar cookie for no reason at all. No mistake, no fault, no explanation. Just because. McRaven recalls that the real purpose of this exercise was not to teach attention to detail, it was to teach resilience in the face of unfairness. In life, you will face situations where you have done everything right, but the outcome will still be bad. You may lose a job despite working hard, face criticism you do not deserve, or watch others get opportunities you have earned. When that happens, you have two choices: you can waste your energy feeling bitter and victimized, or you can shake it off, adapt, and keep moving forward. SEAL instructors knew that those who could endure discomfort without resentment would have the strength to survive the challenges ahead. The truth is, life is not fair. You can be the smartest, the most prepared, the most deserving, and still fail. The sooner you accept this reality, the freer you become. Instead of fighting against the unfairness, you learn to fight through it. Think of Thomas Edison, who tried and failed over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb. Or J.K. Rowling, who was rejected by numerous publishers before Harry Potter became a worldwide phenomenon. If they had seen each rejection as unfair and given up, the world would never have seen their contributions. This is not about ignoring injustice when you can change it. It is about learning to move forward when the injustice is beyond your control. In SEAL training, the sugar cookie was a test. Would you still perform at your best when you were cold, wet, and covered in sand for no reason? Those who could handle that without complaint were the ones most likely to succeed in far harsher conditions. In your own life, unfair moments will happen, promotions will be skipped, recognition will be missed, and luck will sometimes favor someone else. But the measure of your character is not in how you act when everything is going your way, it is in how you carry yourself when nothing is. Being a sugar cookie teaches you that you do not have to like discomfort, but you can learn to live with it. And once you learn that, no amount of grit, literal or metaphorical, can stop you from reaching your goals. Part 5, Do not be afraid of the circus. In Navy SEAL training, the circus was the punishment that every trainee dreaded. It was not a fun performance under a tent. Instead, it was 2 extra hours of intense physical training at the end of an already brutal day. If you failed to meet a standard during the day, maybe your swim time was too slow, or your push UPS were not up to par, your name went on the list. That night, after everyone else was released to rest, you had to stay back and endure the circus. 2 extra hours meant more running, more push UPS, more sit UPS, more cold water just when your body and mind were already drained. For many, this was the breaking point. The circus was designed to punish failure, but here was the irony: those who endured the circus night after night often came out stronger than those who never faced it. Admiral McRaven recalls that the circus created an unexpected advantage. It pushed your body past its comfort zone, forced you to develop greater endurance, and taught you that failure is not the end, it is a stepping stone. In life, the circus moments are those extra hardships that come after a setback. You fail an exam and must spend extra hours studying. You lose a client and must work twice as hard to rebuild your business. You fall behind in training and must put in early mornings and late nights to catch up. At first, it feels like punishment. But over time, you realize these moments are forging resilience and discipline that success alone cannot build. The people who achieve the most are rarely the ones who never fail, they are the ones who have failed, learned, and grown stronger from it. History is filled with examples of circus graduates. Michael Jordan, famously cut from his high school basketball team, used the sting of failure as fuel to train harder than ever. The Beatles were rejected by multiple record labels before becoming the most influential band in history. They each faced their own circus, long, grueling, discouraging, but they stayed in the game until they were unbeatable. The lesson is simple but not easy: failure is not a verdict, it is an invitation. The circus is where you transform weakness into strength, where discipline is born, and where the foundation for future victories is laid. So when life hands you your own circus, the long nights, the exhausting grind, the feeling of starting over, do not shy away. Step into it. You may hate it in the moment, but one day, you will realize it was the very thing that prepared you to win. Part 6, Slide down the obstacle head first. In Navy SEAL training, one of the most feared and physically demanding challenges was the obstacle course. It was a maze of walls, ropes, and barriers designed to push every limit of your body and mind. Among these, the most intimidating was the slide for life, a high, long rope suspended between 2 towers. Trainees were required to slide from the top of one tower to the other, and the fastest way was the riskiest: head first. Most people preferred to go feet first, hanging underneath the rope, inching along slowly. It felt safer, but it took longer and drained more energy. Going head first meant embracing speed, uncertainty, and danger, but it also meant breaking records. Admiral McRaven recalls that the day he decided to try it head first, he flew past his own limits and finished faster than ever before. Life often presents us with similar choices. There is the safe route, the familiar path that keeps us away from discomfort but also away from our true potential. Then there is the bold route, the one that requires you to face your fears and commit fully, knowing you could stumble but also knowing that you might soar. Sliding down the obstacle head first is about courage. It is about making a decision to trust yourself and take a calculated risk. Many of life's greatest rewards are found beyond that initial leap of faith. The entrepreneur who leaves a stable job to start a business. The student who applies for a scholarship they believe is out of reach. The athlete who attempts a more challenging technique in competition. Playing it safe can protect you from failure, but it also protects you from growth. Head-first moments are uncomfortable because they force you into the unknown. You cannot control every variable. You must commit and trust that your preparation, skill, and persistence will carry you through. The truth is, no one ever achieved greatness by holding back. Whether in the military, in sports, or in everyday life, the people who move forward are the ones who are willing to act before they feel completely ready. So when you face your next big challenge, remember this lesson from the obstacle course. Do not always take the slow, cautious way. Sometimes, you have to slide down the rope head first. You might surprise yourself at how far and how fast you can go when you lead with courage. Part 7, Do not ever quit. In the crucible of Navy SEAL training, there is a brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound. It is not large, but it carries enormous weight. The instructors make it clear from the first day: if you ever feel that the pain is too much, the cold is too biting, the exhaustion too unbearable, all you have to do is walk over, ring that bell, and the training will be over. No more running in wet sand, no more freezing ocean swims, no more shouting from instructors. Just ring the bell and you can go back to a warm bed, hot meals, and an easy life. But McRaven explains that the moment you ring that bell, you are not just ending the training, you are ending the chance to discover how much you are truly capable of. That bell tempts people at their weakest moments. It whispers that quitting will make the pain stop. But what it never tells you is that quitting comes with a heavier burden, the lifelong question of what could have been if you had held on a little longer. This is not just about SEAL training. In life, every one of us has our own bell. It might be the urge to abandon a dream when the road gets tough, to give up on a relationship because it takes work, to leave a job without trying to solve the problems, or to stop pursuing a goal because progress feels slow. The truth is, the difference between success and failure is often just persistence. The most successful people in history were not the smartest or the strongest, but the ones who simply refused to give up when others did. Thomas Edison failed thousands of times before perfecting the light bulb. J.K. Rowling was rejected by numerous publishers before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon. Nelson Mandela endured 27 years in prison before becoming a president and a global symbol of perseverance. Life will test you. It will push you to your limits and beyond. There will be moments when you feel alone, tired, and ready to quit. That is when the bell will look most appealing. But if you can push past that moment, if you can keep moving forward despite the discomfort, you will emerge stronger, more resilient, and closer to your goal than you ever imagined. So remember this final and perhaps most important lesson: do not ever quit. The road to victory is often just a little longer than the road to defeat. Hold on. Keep going. You may be just steps away from the breakthrough you have been waiting for. Part 7, Never, ever quit. In Navy SEAL training, there is a small brass bell that hangs in the center of the compound. It is unassuming, yet it carries tremendous power. Every trainee is told from the start: if the pain becomes too much, if the cold ocean water feels unbearable, if the endless runs and sleepless nights break your spirit, all you have to do is walk up, ring that bell, and you are done. No more push ups, no more shouting instructors, no more discomfort. Just the comfort of knowing it is over. But ringing that bell also means one thing: you have quit. You have chosen the easy way out, abandoning the path you started. Admiral McRaven explains that the bell is not just a way to end training, it is a symbol for every moment in life when giving up feels easier than pushing forward. We all face our own version of that brass bell. It might be the urge to quit a challenging project, to walk away from a dream that is taking too long, to let go of a goal when results seem far away. The temptation to give in can be overwhelming, especially when progress feels invisible and the struggle is all you can see. But history shows that greatness is almost always achieved by those who refuse to quit. Thomas Edison kept experimenting after thousands of failed attempts to create the light bulb. Michael Jordan was cut from his high school basketball team before becoming one of the greatest athletes of all time. Nelson Mandela endured 27 years in prison before becoming a symbol of freedom and resilience. They all had moments when quitting would have been easier, but they did not. Life's hardest moments are often the ones that define us. When you keep moving forward despite exhaustion, fear, or failure, you build a strength that no one can take away from you. And more often than not, the breakthrough you are searching for is just beyond the point where most people give up. So the final lesson is simple: never, ever quit. Do not let the comfort of stopping rob you of the satisfaction of finishing. You may be closer to your goal than you realize, and the only way to know for sure is to keep going until you get there. And so, we reach the end of this journey through the lessons of Make Your Bed. Simple lessons, drawn from the discipline and grit of Navy SEAL life, yet deeply relevant to each of us in our daily lives. From starting your day with small wins to embracing failure as a teacher, from daring greatly to standing strong for what is right, these are not just military strategies, they are life strategies. The beauty of these lessons is in their simplicity. You do not need extraordinary talent, vast resources, or a perfect plan to change your life and the world around you. You need discipline to take the first step, resilience to keep going when it gets hard, and the courage to never give up when challenges try to knock you down. At Books Arena, we believe that knowledge is most powerful when it inspires action. If even one of these principles sparks a change in the way you approach your day, you have already taken a step toward transforming your future. So, take what you have learned here. Start small. Be consistent. Stand tall in the face of adversity. And above all, never, ever quit. This is Books Arena, thanking you for listening. Remember to subscribe for more life-changing insights, and keep turning the pages toward a better you.